That polarization is almost entirely the creation of a media elite who believe themselves to be part of a new ruling class who get to dictate to you how to live. They know better than you how to live. And if you agree with them, then you are one of the elect. And if you disagree with them, then you are a member of the damned. This starts, by the way, at our universities. There's an article in the New York Times called Inside a Battle Over Race, Class, and Power at Smith College. And this is just indicative of how our society really works, because colleges are basically just a microcosm, a slightly more extreme microcosm of what's happening in corporate America, of what is happening even in the scientific community, the shutdown of science that is currently happening in the publishing community. The war on openness of ideas is ongoing and dangerous. So, according to the New York Times, in midsummer of 2018, Umu Kanut, a black student at Smith College, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name, recounted a distressing American tale. She was eating lunch in a dorm lounge when a janitor and a campus police officer walked over and asked her what she was doing there. The officer, who could have been carrying a lethal weapon, left her near meltdown, Ms. Kanut wrote on Facebook, saying that this encounter continued a year-long pattern of harassment at Smith. All I did was be black, Ms. Kanut wrote. It's outrageous that some people question my being at Smith College and my existence overall as a woman of color. The college's president, Kathleen McCartney, offered profuse apologies and put the janitor on paid leave. The janitor. This painful incident reminds us of the ongoing legacy of racism and bias, the president wrote, in which people of color are targeted simply while going about the business of their ordinary lives. The New York Times, Washington Post, CNN picked up the story of a young female student harassed by white workers. The ACLU, which took the student's case, said she was profiled for eating while black. Less attention was paid 3 months later, when a law firm hired by Smith College to investigate the episode found no persuasive evidence of bias. Oh, interesting. Less attention was paid. This is in the New York Times. Note, this happened, again, in midsummer of 2018. The date of this article, the one I'm reading right now, is February 24th, 2021. And yet we knew 3 months later that the story was bullcrap. Did the New York Times print a retraction? Of course not. Did the New York Times go back and report the story? Of course not. Did CNN do that? Did the Washington Post do that? No, because they are dedicated to the narrative that America is a place of deep and abiding racism. And that anybody who opposes that narrative is, in fact, opposing the narrative is itself a sign that you are racist. Opposing the narrative, suggesting that America is not systemically racist, that America is a land of liberty, filled with decent people, that is a sign that you are a bigot. Right? You're probably one of those Trump supporters. According to the New York Times, less attention was paid 3 months later when a law firm hired by Smith College to investigate the episode found no persuasive evidence of bias. Ms. Kanut was determined to have eaten in a deserted dorm that had been closed for the summer. The janitor had been encouraged to notify security if he saw unauthorized people there. The officer, like all campus police, was unarmed. So every single element of the story was a lie. Every single one. This person insisted in eating in a deserted dorm hall that was supposed to be closed. The janitor had been instructed to tell people if somebody tried to eat in there, and the officer was unarmed. And according to this woman's story, she went to eat in like a normal dorm hall. The janitor profiled her for being black, and an armed officer came and threatened her. So every element was a lie. Smith College officials emphasized reconciliation and healing after the incident. In the months to come, they announced a raft of anti-bias training for all staff, a revamped and more sensitive campus police force, and the creation of dormitories, as demanded by Ms. Kanut and her ACLU lawyer, set aside for black students and other students of color. By the way, if you want just a case study in the perversion of liberalism into hardcore leftists, just take a look at the ACLU. The ACLU used to be the people who suggested that, yes, we hate the KKK, but they have a right to march through the Jewish areas of Skokie. Now the ACLU are the people who are like, you know what? We should separate dorm rooms for the sensitivity of black students and make sure that we have segregated dorm facilities. The ACLU are the people who say that they will not defend, they literally say this, they will not defend civil liberties if those civil liberties come into conflict with higher priorities of sensitivity. They're literally the opposite of a civil liberties union at this point. It demonstrates the shift from liberalism to leftism and how you leave behind all of the priorities you used to hold so long as you are in the search for utopia. According to the New York Times, they did not offer any public apology or amends to the workers whose lives were gravely disrupted by the student's accusation. This is a tale of how race, class, and power collided at the elite 145-year-old liberal arts college where tuition, room, and board top $78,000 a year, and where the employees who keep the school running often come from working-class enclaves beyond the school's elegant wrought iron gates. The story highlights the tensions between a student's deeply felt sense of personal truth and the facts that are at odds with it. My God, the way that the New York Times phrases that. The story highlights the tension between a deeply felt sense of personal truth and fact that are at odds with it. Okay, translate that over to the QAnon folks and see if the New York Times goes along with that. You know, there are people who have a deeply felt sense of personal truth about the QAnon conspiracy theory, but there are facts at odds with it, and there's tension there. Or is that you're completely wrong and lying and you believe a bunch of horse crap. And there are facts that disprove this, which makes you a liar because facts exist in real life. And the New York Times reported the lie for years. And only 3 years later are they coming back around. They're like, well, I guess that, there is a tension between your personal truth and actual facts. These tensions, says the New York Times, come at a time when few in the Smith community feel comfortable publicly questioning liberal orthodoxy on race and identity. And some professors worry the administration is too deferential to its increasingly emboldened students. Right, because why would you question the liberal orthodoxy? If you question liberal orthodoxy, then you become one of the people with a target on your back. James Miller, econ professor at Smith, says, my perception is if you're on the wrong side of issues of identity politics, you're not just mistaken, you're evil. Correct. And that perception has spread throughout the liberal community, which is why you see that stat that the highest percentage of any percentage of Democrats who believe that there's a problem believe that the problem is Trump supporters and white nationalism. In an interview, Ms. McCartney said that Ms. Knute's encounter with the campus staff was part of a spate of cases of living while black harassment across the nation. There was, she noted, great pressure to act. We always try to show compassion for everyone involved. Well, not the janitor. The janitor who's probably making $20,000 a year. That guy got in serious trouble for doing nothing wrong. Faculty members pointed to a pattern they say reflects the college's growing timidity in the face of allegations from students, especially around the issue of race and ethnicity. In 2016, students denounced faculty at Smith's social work program as racist after some professors questioned whether admission standards for the program had been lowered, and this was affecting the quality of the fieldwork. Dennis Meals, one of the professors they decried, left the school long after because you're not even allowed to point out that when you put in place affirmative action programs, it lowers the standards of admission. That is what affirmative action programs are deliberately designed to do. If people had to meet the exact same standard, you wouldn't have to have affirmative action programs. Affirmative action programs are deliberately designed to lower standards through the soft bigotry of low expectations in order to achieve the proper racial balance. But if you point that out, probably you should be forced to leave because looking truth directly in the face is not allowed. Then in the autumn of 2019, the Religious Studies Department proposed a class on Native American religion and spirituality. A full complement of students registered, but well before classes began, a small contingent of Native American students and allies pasted bright red posters on buildings on campus reviling the course as harmful, intrusive, and disrespectful, and attacking the instructor who was young, white, and not on a tenure track. He had an academic background in this field and has modeled his course on that of his mentor, who was a well-known professor and member of the Choctaw Nation. The administration declined to challenge the student protesters, had the instructor submit to sessions of radical listening with the protesters, and the Religious Studies Department dropped the class. All of this is disgusting and terrible, but it does not matter. The New York Times still treats the original story as worthwhile of respect, which it turned out to be crap, by the way. The janitor is the one who's the actual victim in this story. The janitor, who was in his 60s and poor of sight, was emptying garbage cans when he noticed someone in a closed lounge. All involved with the summer camp were required to have state background checks, and campus police had advised staff it was wisest to call security rather than confront strangers on its own. The janitor dialed security. The janitor did not note the lady's race. Miss Knute was in the shadows. He was not sure if he was looking at a man or a woman. Later, Knute would accuse the janitor of misgendering her. A well-known older campus security officer drove over to the dorm, recognized Knute as a student. They had a brief and polite conversation, which she recorded. He apologized for bothering her. She spoke to him of her discomfort. That night, she wrote a Facebook post, and the college took it so seriously that they basically decided they were going to can everybody involved. I mean, all of this is just indicative of where we are as a society. It's indicative of how our society works. And it's terrible. Again, it's just insanity. Okay, the treatment of this story as anything remotely approaching realistic is insanity. 3 weeks after the incident at Tyler House, Miss Blair, a cafeteria worker, received an email from a reporter at the Boston Globe asking her to comment on why she called security for Miss Knute for eating while black. This puzzled her. What did she have to do with anything? The next morning, the food services director called. Jackie, he said, you're on Facebook. Knute had posted her name, photograph, and email, along with the janitor's name, photograph, and email. Knute said that Blair was the racist and said that the janitor was also a racist. Blair has lupus. She felt faint. She lives with her husband, a mechanic, and makes $40,000 a year. Smith put out a short statement noting that Blair had not placed the phone call to security, but did not absolve her of broader responsibility. Somebody at the administration called, again, this is like an unrelated cafeteria worker who's now getting death threats because of all of this. But don't worry, this is just about the tension between some people's version of truth and, the truth. Okay, so here's the thing. This has now bled over into every element of our society because the narrative matters more than the fact. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.